Hi there. Good day to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today in your education management. Tonight's topic is about the impact of key policy changes on teaching, learning, and assessment. In previous sessions, we learned about the changes, policy changes, practice changes because of the theoretical change, and the impact of those on the stakeholders, meaning people. When you mean key stakeholders of educational setting, it's about the lecturers, students, administration staff of schools and universities, and those kind of people. But tonight's topic is about the impact of policy, limited to policy. We don't need to talk about the theoretical change or practice change, just the policy change, meaning the law. Okay, the lawmakers, the regulators, when they change the policy, how does that work on teaching, learning, and assessments? When the policy changes, how should your policy change? So your answer is limited to policy change on teaching, learning, and assessment. How should your teaching happen after this policy? How should the learning happen and the assessment? Okay, so let's have a look at some of those. Now, the policy changes, that makes lots of changes in teaching. Okay, now the teaching, the curriculum design and delivery is changing from the memory test to the skill developers. Okay, we used to develop the content memorization. So teachers, they teach you something, you memorize that content, you memorize that message, and then you write the exams. That is the content memorization. But now the new law that says uh, you have to develop skills in students. It's not about memorizing now. You study science, memorize all the scientific equations, and you write those in your exams. That is the memory test. Now, this is not the case. It's about developing your skills. Okay. The another example in teaching, you might have heard of this session plan. Okay, session plan. You need to have a session plan or otherwise the lesson plan when you have your module. Your module has different breakdowns with different headings. We call those sessions or lessons. Okay, and you have to have a lesson plan, and you need to definitely have one. Earlier days we don't have one. It is not mandatory, but today's policy mandates. So when you teach things, you need to know when you're going to deliver the first session, the first lesson, when you're going to deliver the second lesson, third lesson, and the last lesson. When is your unit test? When is your final test? When you're going to give the feedback? When you're going to give the uh, summative assessment? When is your formative assessment? And when do you release your result as well? All of those things should be available to the students based on this new policy. Okay, so this is again another impact of new policy in teaching. You cannot teach simply the way you like. You cannot simply go and teach what you like. You have to have a session plan, and according to the session plan, you have to deliver and complete all the teaching, all the assessments as well, and releasing the results. Now, the next thing on this teaching is about the inclusion and diversity. Right now, when I mean diversity, diversity means different types. Diversity means different types. Now, if you take a country like UK, you will have different type of students from different background. Okay, you have your locals, you have the migrant students as well. People, they migrate to the UK, they are also there in school. Okay, so if you don't have this inclusion and diversity policy, if you don't mandate this, the disadvantaged or underprivileged students will be marginalized. Okay, they don't get a chance to study. For example, when you get some students from different backgrounds, if they have migrated from Africa, they will have definitely some language problem. So you should have a teaching method that includes the language support as well to get these people as well in the same class. Okay, you cannot simply uh, neglect them. You cannot simply put them away because they can't understand your English when you teach. So you should have some mechanism to include them as well. This is again the new policies recommend. You cannot only teach those who can speak English. You cannot only teach those who have some racial priority. No, you have to include everyone. So diversity is accepted. We accept people to have diverse culture, diverse capabilities, and we have to take all of them in the class. So that you need to have some differentiated instructions as well. Now, if I explain something to some student, they may understand, and some other students in the same class, they may not understand what I mean because of the background problem, because of the language difficulties, because they're new to the class. There may be reasons. In this case, you have to have a differentiated instruction, differentiated teaching methods to accommodate those diverse learners as well. You have to accommodate them as well. You cannot marginalize. This is another impact on the teaching based on these new policies. Okay. Use of technology, that is again another compulsory requirement for teaching, assessing as well. So when I mean the technology, the digital transformation, okay, that necessitate the integration of edtech. Okay, so that will make impact on you, how you deliver, okay, the way you deliver, the way you develop the content, the way you pass the message on to them. The classroom that you teach, you may teach them on digital classrooms, you can teach them on platforms, digital platforms, teaching platforms, learning management systems. These are all somewhat mandated, somewhat encouraged by this new policy to teach students. So this is again another impact of this policy. Okay, you can find out the exact policy, what mandates this. Okay, the next thing is about the impact on learning. When students learn, what happens in learning? Now, this is about the student-centered approach, as we have been talking about in the previous sessions, where students they have to commit themselves to learn things. The learning doesn't happen in isolation. We used to study when we were young, when we were doing our A levels in our room. We don't do group studies. We don't speak to each other. You stay in your home. You have your own table. Nobody has access to your room. You just close your door and you study. You memorize the book, do some exercise, and go to your exams. Okay, so that is about the teacher centered. Teacher give you the content, you learn it. That's a teacher-centered learning. Now it's about the student-centered learning. So students are free to choose to learn things on their own. They are free to choose the speed of their learning as well, the pace of their learning as well. You don't need to complete everything as scheduled. They allow you enough time. You learn that at your own speed. Okay, so there's an impact in learning. So you can learn things, and your learning is personalized to you to learn what you want. It's not about personal learning. Personal learning means you learn alone. It's not that. It's about personalized learning. You only learn what you really need to learn, what you love to learn. You don't learn things that you don't like. If I tell you this example, uh, I I had a discussion with a student. This guy is very good in memory. His memory is powerful. I have tested that in many ways. He can remember things easily. And in the school, you have the history subject. You talk about all these kings of your country. They ruled the country 200, 300, 400 years ago. What happened in the past? All those wars, all those colonized stories, and so on. When he is learning, he said, that is interesting, but not to me. I don't like this subject. Why should I learn? But the problem is he scores very good marks in that, 85, 89 marks for that subject. And I remember once he got the highest marks as well in his report sheet, but he doesn't like it. Okay, so this is about the learners, students. In fact, the teacher-centered learning. Teachers say learn this subject, but you don't like it. Okay, so all you need is to choose the subject yourself. You choose from what subjects available to you, and then you learn what you want in that. That's a new role. Okay, so that is about that. And the next thing is about the EQT. Learners have the EQT. EQT means equality. Okay, so uh, you have the equal rights. Okay, people have access to education universally. Okay, now if you go to the UK, the law is this: if you are a migrant parent, you might not have the right to work there. You are an adult and you have your family, you have entered in the UK. Sometimes the immigration law doesn't allow you to work because you are not a documented migrant. You don't have access to work. So you don't have access to education either because you're not a UK citizen. If you want to study, you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you don't have access. Immigrants, you need to have the documentation. You have to get the ILR, indefinite leave to remain, to get those kind of rights. But your kids, if they are below the age, underaged kids, they have the right for education. Okay, and the law. I don't know the updated version of it, the policy, updated policy of it now. But if a student comes to school to study, you cannot ask him certain questions. His birth certificate, certain documents. He wants to study. You have to let him study. That's the law. That's the policy now. Okay, so that's about equity and access to education. They give access to education to kids, to youngsters. Okay, that is a universal access. That is again an impact in learning. Anybody can learn. That is why you see people from very poor background, they also study, they also come to good positions, they also get educated. And the next policy is about the mental health and the well-being of students. Here, new policy says you need to have certain uh, relaxation, certain flexibility when you teach people, when you learn. So I would say reduced exams pressure. Okay, create a supportive learning environment. These are all recommends, or these are all the impact of learning because of this new policy. Okay, and some other policies that I would say as well. Reasonable adjustments. There's a policy. Okay, that policy says if you are disadvantaged due to some sickness, some illness, some capacity, or some differently able personals, you cannot have the same kind of exams of others. You may be studying in the same class, the exam paper they give, the assessment, the test they do, you may be having certain difficulties facing that one. For example, let's say you might have some visionary problem, so you can't read the exam paper. Okay. So if they give the exam paper, you cannot answer the questions because you have some visionary problems. You can't read the paper because of your vision, and the others can read. So this will give you some disadvantage. In this case, they may give you an audio exam paper that is recorded. The exam paper will be read to you. Okay, so that is what we call the reasonable adjustment. Your paper can be adjusted, and because of your capacity in your class, you cannot answer the questions the way the other usual student answer. In that case, you have the right to go for some reasonable adjustments. We call it you adjust the papers, the questions that fits for this person specifically. These are all mandatory requirements, accepted rules and laws because of this new policy. Okay, so learning is made easy, learning is made flexible because of this policy. And the assessment, again, when you say assessment, what is the impact of this assessment? Now, earlier days, assessment is about standardized assessment. For everyone, you get the same paper. And that is always competitive. They compare the students. Okay, so standardized paper, right? That is the earlier version of it. Then that concept is like teach to test. You teach them and test them. But no, it's not the case today. We have different papers for different people. We have different papers for different batches. That is accepted, right? And the assessment methods. Earlier days, when you mean assessment, it's about exams, right? Now, I remember from your grade one to A levels, even professional exams, professional qualifications, they do exams. Still today, they have that practice exams. Okay, all the times. Now it is relaxed and it is accepted by new policy to do different tests. There are so many tests we can do. We can do assignments, we can do portfolio assessments, we can do presentations, okay, we can do project works, okay, we can do a lot of different things. There are so many different ways that we can test people, we can assess people if they can do it, if they have that. And that is accepted by this new policy. So it's an impact in assessments of people. And the next thing is about the technology-driven assessments. Earlier days, your assessments were paper-based or practical-based. You have to manually do it. Now today, it's about online exams. Okay, digital technology is used to test. And there are so many digital tools that can assess students. AI-driven platforms. Okay, online exams, we have heard of them. Computer-based exams. There are so many stuff that happen. Right, so those are the impacts on assessments. So now we have learned about the impact of policy changes on three things. Number one, teaching. Number two, learning. Number three, assessments. There are so many other. You can bring in the laws and you can discuss those. Now, let me discuss a few more policies here. Number one is that there are so many. This is from the US. No child left behind. Okay, this gives increased focus on standardized testing to lead debates over its impact on deep learning. This policy is questioning about the standardized testing. Standardized testing means uh, your O level is a standardized test. Right? You study, one of you study from one city, the other one study from the other city, and you both of you have a different quality of learning because your teachers are different, your learning environment is different, the facilities in your schools are different, and so on. But still, all of you write the same exams to enter into the university. This is standardized. Okay. And there is a debate over it. People say this is not going to work. This is not good. Okay. And because this will leave children, students behind. Okay. This is a disadvantage for them. And the next example is about the national education policy from India. This is emphasizing on skill-based learning, and that is trying to reduce the memorization tests. Okay, the standardized memory test means exams. This policy in India is encouraging different ways of testing, specifically skill-based learning. Okay, so these are all policies. There are so many other policies that you can learn from. Refer those in your assignments. Okay, right. So I think that is it from me on this, and I have covered the lecture's main topic today. Thank you very much. I see you later. Have a good day.